I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing, please.
We'd just like to observe a moment of silence. We've had two staff members in the past couple of weeks pass away in a rather untimely manner. Mrs. D. Janet Dinshevsky from Marlboro High School and Charlie Dingshin, who assisted in the office at Gold Snake High School. So just a moment of silence. Thank you.
Before we get started tonight, I would like to read a statement from our board and administration. Our board and administration felt it was important and appropriate to take some time this evening to discuss the recent State Comptroller's report in which the Freehold Regional High School District was one of several local government agencies whose legal billings during the 2010-2011 school year were reviewed. Our goal tonight is to clarify a number of misperceptions and to put to rest the inflammatory allegations that have come from certain members of the public. First and foremost, it is important to understand that the report reflects circumstances that took place almost 3 years ago. The report, by its own admission, reflects the 2010-2011 school year only and does not contain a review or analysis of the district's legal billings from the 2 subsequent school years. Rather, with regards to the present, the State Comptroller's Office has stated that no further investigation or review of the Freehold Regional High School District is necessary. That fact, which should be welcomed, is sadly not enough for those who seek to exploit and inflame the situation in order to continue apparent personal grudges and vendettas. Second, the State Comptroller's Office was called in by the Freehold Regional High School District Board of Education itself in May of 2011 to conduct an audit. This was and remains an unheard of step by a Board of Education. The motion to bring in the State Comptroller's Office was put forth by Mr. Acetola and was unanimously approved by each of the board members here this evening, including Bill, who is absent. It was this board's intent to review all aspects of the district's operations. This board sought, above all, to take affirmative and positive action to move beyond a number of lingering issues from the past, namely Briar State and the public condemnation of the district's then legal counsel, and move towards inspiring the full trust of the students and the public we serve. To not do so would have been not only a disservice to the students, staff, and public we serve, but also would have left the district in a perpetual cloud of doubt and mistrust, the net result of which would have detrimentally affected the education provided to our students, and that was completely unacceptable to us. The board saw no more effective means to accomplish these objectives than to call upon the office of the State Comptroller. Once called in by the board, district officials worked closely with representatives from the State Comptroller's Office over a period of several months. As a result of that collaboration and partnership, the district implemented a model RFP for legal services in accordance with the best practices suggested by the OSC. I should note that our adherence to those best practices sets the Freehold Regional High School District apart from the vast majority of the approximately 600 school districts in the state of New Jersey. Indeed, the State Comptroller's Office worked with the Freehold Regional High School District to implement the use of outside experts to support our RFP process for legal services. This is why we have been disheartened to see a number of individuals trying to utilize the Office of the State Comptroller's report to criticize the district and insinuate that the recommendations for best practices, and I reiterate, best practices, not law, were not adhered to by the Freehold Regional High School District. Frankly, such assertions are the furthest thing from the truth and smack of individual opportunism. In fact, the district has addressed the issues set forth in the OSC report. Again, the State Controller's Office has stated that no further investigation or review of the Freehold Regional High School District is necessary. In a further attempt to try to address some of the individual grandstanding and unfounded claims that have been made, board representatives met last week with State Senator Beck and relayed not only all the district has done since 2010-2011 school year in order to move forward, but also to express our concern with how the report had been received. The Senator has commended our efforts to follow the guidance of the OSC and acknowledges our diligence in calling the OSC into our own district. No matter what those few in the public who apparently prefer perceived scandal over progress attempt to claim, the past 2+ years have been marked by steady improvement in this district in numerous areas. This is no accident, but is representative of the work of the outstanding district officials and a committed and engaged Board of Education. This board and the administration will continue those joint efforts and actions that are aimed at maintaining this district as one of the preeminent school districts in the state and providing our students with the very best public education possible. To those individuals who continue to seek personal attention and to settle perceived personal grudges through repeated and unfounded attacks on this school district, we ask instead that you finally move forward and away from the continual regurgitation of baseless speculation and accusations that are devoid of fact. The time for such conduct has passed, and that is where it will be left, in the past. We are moving forward. The majority of the members of this BOE strongly agree with what I already mentioned, this diploma mill classification, and that is one primary reason why we sought the intervention of the OSC. For those members of the public that latch onto false allegations and unproven innuendo in a continuing effort to defame this district, thought should be given to the fact that these tactics serve to detract from their own original and very real and appropriate and worthy efforts which expose those past and, in my opinion, inexcusable actions that were addressed by an appropriately issued New Jersey cease and desist order, a payback agreement, and a statement from me denouncing BSU and, in effect, the actions of those that took part. For those that continue to search for every chance at criticism, be advised, your 15 minutes of fame is long over. Your continued allegations, which prove costly in dollars also, are not helping this district's students, as these attempts to defame the district do defame the district. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Boyce, roll call.
Before we do, thank you, Mr. Moses. Board, I've asked for a few minutes tonight to address the specifics of the comptroller's report, so that you can understand what the situation was at that time and where we are now. So there were 5 deficiencies noted in the report. The first was Freehold's board attorney submitted bills that were nondescript and block billed, making it impossible to determine whether the billed tasks should have been covered under the retainer. So at that time, we had an agreement that included a retainer. So it was a flat fee, and it covered attendance and preparation at board meetings, as well as what was called routine communications. And the spirit of the comment from the comptroller was that the bills themselves, the invoices, did not contain sufficient detail for them to make a determination as to whether or not the task being listed there should have been part of the retainer. What we do now is we no longer have an umbrella retainer. What we do have is a $750 flat fee per board meeting in our current contract. And any other invoiced items are task-oriented and district-specific and clearly identified on the invoice. Number 2 was, without documented authorization, Freehold permitted its board attorney to exceed agreed-upon cap on legal costs. What the comptroller noted here was that if the board could have taken formal action when the circumstances arose that there was an extraordinary item that needed to be accounted for separately. So that was their recommendation. Annual caps on legal services, we don't currently have that in the legal contract that we have in place right now. The difficulty with it is that the scope of work, the prospective scope of work, is not unilaterally determined by the district. In other words, you may not be aware of all of the legal matters that may arise during the course of the next year, or someone else may initiate legal action against you. So it's difficult to project an annual cap. The way we approach it now is specific to each legal matter, and looking at the different characteristics of that legal matter, we make a decision on what the best course of action is from there. Number 3, Freehold did not comply with the requirements of the Public School Contracts Law by failing to cite supporting reasons for the resolution authorizing the contract award to its board attorney. So the Local Public Contracts Law, which is statute and governs procurement generally for school districts, has a number of mechanisms to procure different goods and services. One of those mechanisms is a professional service contract. And the idea here being is this is not a situation where you develop specifications and put them out and the lowest price gets the business. Professional service contracts are more judgmental in making a determination. So the formal bid process is not necessary. They recommend, the state recommends a periodic deliberative process to make that determination. But for annual appointment, the resolution needs to state the reasons supporting why you made that appointment. So certainly all going forward, all resolutions of that nature will have the supporting reasons identified. Number 4, Freehold contract with board attorney permitted the firm to charge an administrative fee based on percentage of total amount billed. The current legal contract, the contract we have in place right now, does not have a flat percentage administrative fee. Instead, it is that district-specific expenses are clearly identified on the monthly invoices. And finally, nearly 60% of the attorneys employed by the board attorney law firm billed Freehold for legal services in fiscal year 2011. The way we manage our legal relationship now is that all legal matters are coordinated and overseen by a single point of contact with the firm. And Mr. Toscano makes a determination of what's the most efficient and effective way to deploy the 15 attorneys on his staff. So those were the 5 comments specifically and where we are with them now. Importantly, I just want to let you know that I have been and I will continue to work with my colleagues to identify best practices throughout the industry. I take this stuff very seriously, and as opportunities for improvements in internal controls or any other best practices come available, we'll certainly give them full consideration for implementation. And finally, I think it's worth noting that the attorneys that I worked with from the state comptroller's office were really outstanding people. They were very professional, very knowledgeable. They approached their work in a fair and thorough manner, and I think that's worth noting as well. Thank you, Mr. Moses.
I just have so briefly, I just want to address some comments specifically to the report and Mr. Boyce. So I just want to take a moment to address the feedback regarding the past legal billing and Mr. Sean Boyce. I want to be crystal clear that there is no misunderstanding moving forward. The best practices requested in the State Comptroller's report regarding how to ensure effective and quality legal billing in our school district are practices that Mr. Boyce has embraced throughout his career. I also want to be clear that a significant portion of our work in developing our legal services RFP under the guidance of the State Comptroller was conducted by Mr. Boyce. The status of how our legal bills were charged and conducted in 2010-11 were replicated in hundreds of districts across the state. But only one district, the Freehold Regional High School District, with the full support of Mr. Boyce, called in the State Comptroller into our district to improve our practice. Mr. Boyce is an exemplar not just at the local level, but at the state level as a school business official. To have his competence questioned as a result of this report has no basis in fact. I want to state publicly that as superintendent of schools, Mr. Boyce has my full support, utmost confidence, and I don't question his integrity one iota with the work that he does here for this school district. He works his tail off for the school district about 80 hours a week. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay, pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, this meeting has duly advertised in the Park Press, issue of January 18, 2013. All municipal clerks of the townships and boroughs within the regional high school district have been duly notified and requirements of posting notices have been met. Okay, minutes approval, communications, minutes approval. Mr. Boyce? Motion for minutes approval? Jen, motion. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Carl.
Mr. Asatola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sotera?
Yes.
Ms. Tomazic?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes. Okay, communication on file in the board office. Report, superintendent's report.
A few items tonight. First and foremost, I want to formally report out our graduation data for this 2012-2013 school year. So the Freehold Regional High School District on June 25th graduated 2,816 students. There were a total of 41 students district-wide that received their diploma as a result of meeting alternate requirements for graduation as specified in their IEPs. No students were denied graduation because of failure to pass the HESPA or the alternate high school assessment process. Just a quick snapshot of the numbers indicates a district graduation rate of 97.8%. The new adjusted graduation cohort, which is the way the state determines it when students come into your system as ninth graders, sometimes they exit your system but don't exit with you. They might move locales and the such, was 95.14%. We had 21 Ivy League acceptances across the district this year, and 94.5% of our students are pursuing 2- or 4-year colleges. Our summer programs are up and running. All of our programs are located at Colts Neck High School. Our extended school year has about 120 students in it this year. Their talent show is August 8th. That's perhaps the biggest day of the year. If anybody on the board has an opportunity to see that, it's wonderful. But we have 120 of our neediest students at Colts Neck with a fantastic staff. I have to commend Carol Lee Moorfield, who runs that program. I spent some time with her last week, and there's some wonderful, wonderful things occurring there. We're also running a summer credit recovery program at Colts Neck High School. This is the second year that we've done that. We have 93 students enrolled in that program currently for core courses in math and language arts. Our AP Summer Bridge program is poised to run later this month. Next week it begins, June 29th. We have 174 students currently enrolled. 80% of those students have never taken an AP class before. We started the AP Summer Bridge last year, and if you recall, the focus of the program was to provide an opportunity for students who aspire to more rigorous coursework, the opportunity to spend an intensive week with advanced placement teachers, really engage in the critical analysis of what needs to occur in those courses. So we had a number of students last year, I think 268. This year we have 174 thus far, but wonderful opportunities for our students. The numbers, Mr. Moore's indicating to me that the number's gone up, which is good. We also have our 2013 Title I summer program with over 100 students up and running at Colts Neck High School as well. So it's a very busy summer for us. We're meeting the needs of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 400 students at Colts Neck High School at this point in time. A few practical items. We have our administrative retreat scheduled for July 30th of next week. That's the 12-month administrators and myself will be here in this building for a full day Each year we read a book together, and a large part of the day is based on some of the premises within the book. This year the selected reading was Tipping Sacred Cows by Jack Breeden. It's a sort of a flip on some of the conventional virtues in the workplace and how you may look at those differently. So it's really more for some thoughtful discussion on how we approach our work as administrators. And it's important for me as superintendent to have an opportunity with our team outside of state mandated requirements. So we're not going to talk about anything that the state has imposed upon us on that day. Rather, we're going to focus our time on continuing to cultivate our esprit de corps and our team. So, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, board reports. Finance Committee, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met last Monday night, and we started off talking about buildings and grounds. We had the new head, Pat LaGraveness, in to update us about what's been going on over the last 6 weeks. Pat has actually spread out hours in the department to save on overtime costs for maintenance and grounds personnel. He also held the yearly orientation for all the personnel together. And here there was also an educational component, in that there was an insurance company there, and they instructed the employees on how to do their jobs in a more efficient way. You know, for instance, how to lift boxes correctly, different things like that. And he also had meetings with the personnel to publicize his vision on where the department is going to go. And it seemed to get good employee feedback. Moving on to environmental issues, last update I gave, I had spoke about the issue we had back in the early 1990s when the oil tanks were removed from the ground. No one, either the district or the contractors, had the good sense to keep any documentation on that. So we engaged Brinkerhoff Environmental to try to track down the documentation on the oil tank removal. And the bottom line is that at the individual schools, we're going to have to do site inspections. You may recall that here at Pine Street we had an issue. That went very well. There was no oil that had leaked into the soil here. And so we're going to have to do that at all the individual schools. And you'll see on your agenda there's actually a proposal tonight to engage Brinkerhoff for $67,800, which comes down to about $13,100 per school to do this. Moving on to capital projects, we talked about that back in December. The administration had asked the individual building principals what enhancements or repairs they were looking for in the year ahead. And in March, the requests were evaluated, and essentially we really wanted to spend money on projects that would enhance student safety. For instance, the bleachers in Colts Neck High School had to be fixed. There were exterior doors in Freehold. And also the carpet had to be changed in the guidance office at Manalapan. So those are some of the places where we had to spend money. One other thing with respect to the environmental issue is obviously that's costing us a lot of money. So what we're going to do is hold off on repairing or replacing the generator in Manalapan. That's been put on hold because it has a head gasket leak. So until we know how much money we have to spend on the environmental issue, we're not going to spend money on that. I talked about the Brinkerhoff issue that's on the agenda. Another thing that's on the agenda that we talked about was the property and casualty insurance premiums, which are over $800,000. And then finally, we also discussed the contract for food services, which is on the agenda for tonight. Sodexo has their fourth annual approval going on tonight, but after year 4, the contract's going to be over, so we're going to have to do an RFP for food service in the next year. And finally, getting back to good old ESIP, the field work on what energy conservation can be achieved is about 99% complete. I mean, this is no magic bullet to solve all of our building problems, but Sean sat down with BPU, and they were very, very accommodating, and it appears that BPU is going to do whatever they can to help us. And there's also some capital funding from the state Theoretically, you might be able to get state funding for 30% of the some of the aspects of the ESIP. And we also had a discussion at the meeting on various financing options for the ESIP. And that's what happened last Monday night.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions?
So one additional item that I need to update the board and public on, our harassment, intimidation, and bullying self-assessment is being accepted this evening. And what that entails, the Commissioner of Education mandated that each school district conduct a self-assessment of their practices related to the newly instituted HIB law, and that needed to be conducted by August 15th, 2013. We've complied with that in each of our 6 high schools over the past several months, and what the self-assessment looked like was a range of questions that the individual person in charge of HIB within the building level, so the HIB coordinator, needed to fill out and rank the work within each high school. Our scores range from a high, the top score you can give yourself is 75. Again, it's a self-assessment. And all of our high schools were within the range of 68 to 75. And on each and every category within the self-assessment, we met the expectations and or exceeded the expectations of the state. We feel that we are well on top of the mandate as envisioned by the Department of Education. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we come to public participation. Oh,
Just the agenda, there are a couple of addendum on the back table. There's one in the personnel section, the H section. There's also one of the insurance, property insurance that Mr. Messinger just spoke about. There's also a revised attachment 2 included on the back. And then one other thing, on page 8, for appointments honoraria under Colts Neck High School fall sports, remove the name Scholl Steve, assistant football coach, step 1, 6,013. So that's a correction on the agenda in the back.
thank you, Mr. Boyce. Okay, public participation. Mr. Sage.
Especially I want to thank you, Mary Ann, and Carl for bringing the issue of the illegal billing practices to the Controller's Office. From my understanding, it was for crafting a template for requests for proposals. Why it broadened into what it did, I don't know. But you had your 10 minutes talking about it. Now it's my turn to talk about it.
Excuse me, Mr. Sage, I want to clarify something. I didn't take 10 minutes.
Well,
I didn't take 10 minutes. In fact, if I remember correctly, I went over this. I took about 5.5, which is what I usually give you guys.
all right.
So
Well,
I didn't take more. I'm not greedy.
I got 5 minutes and I want to discuss it from
Go
my
ahead.
perspective, and this is my opinion on it.
Okay.
On June 25th, the Office of State Control issued a scathing indictment regarding the business operations as they relate to the management and payment of a legal contract with the former board attorney. The Control's report demonstrates the failure of administrators exercising due diligence and care with taxpayer monies. Once again, new statewide laws are being contemplated due to the actions of Freehold regional administrators. The very same Jennifer Beck that you spoke about earlier is the one that's sponsoring these laws. She wants to codify the best business practices. 5 areas of lax financial oversight were identified. 2 areas cited in the report are cause for concern, as far as I'm concerned. These 2 areas can possibly impact our state aid because they violate the Public School Contracts Law. The report is now in the hands of the State Education Commission. If the Commission feels any laws are broken or spending on legal fees has been unreasonable, ineffective, or inefficient, he has the right to withhold future state aid or demand refund of any aid already awarded to this district. To place this district in this kind of financial jeopardy is totally unacceptable. It hurts the taxpayers and our children, and somebody needs to be held accountable and responsible. The administration of this district has shown once again it is incapable of managing itself. Who suffers? Like I said, it's the children and the taxpayers. Just several weeks ago, the managing editor of the Transcript, whose child recently graduated from Freehold Township High School, reported that students didn't have paper to complete their assignments. However, money seems to be available for bogus degrees resulting in extra employee compensation, providing a superintendent's salary for a no-show job, offering outrageous 28% pay raises, providing an unprecedented stipend to an administrator who was also the recipient of several pay raises in a very short period of time. Also, inexplicably renewing the superintendent's contract with 2 years remaining on his contract. And standing by a law firm for years, the public demanded be shown the door for being on the wrong side of numerous issues. But this administration refused. Why? Because those demands came from a few insignificant taxpayers. The controls report exposed lax and careless financial oversight committed by district officials, which ultimately embarrassed those administrators. Now, all of a sudden, just prior to the release of the report, the former law firm is out the door. My only regret is that the report did not go back further than 2011. Had it did, undoubtedly more financial hemorrhaging would have been exposed. About 2 months ago, I inquired about those administrative fees, if you remember. I was given an answer to a question I didn't ask. Thanks to the controls report, I now know what those nasty little administrative fees are all about. Statements from district employees indicating that this district will comply with all recommendations made by the controls report are a little too late. Such statements are akin to locking the barn door after the horse has already escaped. If this board is serious about any fiscal restraint and responsibility, it will turn down any and all recommendations by this superintendent for any employee pay raises this calendar year. The possibility of losing state aid is always looming over our heads. This district has to stop being used as a cash cow by administrative staff. In closing, I'd like to report another episode of poor financial management. In February of this year, former Assistant Superintendent Ms. Evangelista finally, after 5 disgraceful years of repeated demands by taxpayers, has finally reimbursed this district of the tuition reimbursement and pay raises associated with FRHSD State University. This episode, which was probably one of the largest cases of academic fraud, could have been prevented had someone just said something like, it was wrong, or better yet, pay back the money. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
You want to say something about the paper?
I just want to address one thing, and that's the idiotic preposition put forth by Mr. Rosen that there was a paper shortage in the school district, and that a paper shortage in 2013 would have occurred as a result of a budget in 2010, and on face value just how utterly devoid of sense that is. At the end of the school year, Mrs. Higley instructed her staff to conserve white paper as they awaited another shipment of white paper, and to use the colored paper that was available. Why Mr. Rosen chose to write that in an editorial on the day that we graduated 2,816 students in this school district, I'll never know. But it was certainly done without calling my office to check the facts before he put it to print. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have Gloria Close.
The original contract gave Mr. Sampson 4 years. He wasn't even at the end of the second year. The board decided to save that waiver to the county superintendent only in the second year of your 4-year contract. And under your new contract, the board asked, I guess you're getting now $190,000, and then you get a stipend of $2,000, $4,000, $5,500, $5,500, $5,500. That is ending to 2018, the end of your new contract. My question here is, I don't know how the board jumped into that granting. Is it because you are leaving the district, or is it because of the merit pay? See, the merit pay, we have a problem, and we bring that up to you year after year, 2 years actually, because those qualitative and quantitative goals, anybody can tell you, those duties really fall under your job descriptions. And this board, though, that was like a giveaway by the governor. It is something that the board is not forced to give to you. It is their option to give or to deny. So if that was the reason, that, okay, you're not getting the stipend now, I truly feel the taxpayer is still losing on this. Because now, before you were getting $177,500. The $2,500 was already built into that $175,000, which was cut by the governor, because we have more than 10,000 student populations here. But then they jack up your pay to $190,000. The merit is not built towards your pension, because it is not a salary. But now building up your income to $190,000, and also all those stipend. Why are you getting the stipend to begin with? Are you not happy with $190,000? Because you are right away got a $12,500 increase right there and then. And then that builds up your pension. And all the stipend will also add to that and builds up more of your pension. So I don't understand the reasoning why the board jumped into. I understand if you were going to your 3.5 years and your contract is up on the 4th. Yeah, maybe it's time for the board to discuss whether you are performing to grant a new contract. But you're not even at the end of your second year of your 4-year contract. I don't know what got to the board, and you just jump in and ask the waiver. And the funny part of that is, I know I wasn't here on the 17th, but that important decision by the board was on page 13 of the agenda. And you know, this board has a habit now of not anymore going to item 1 to be approved, item 2 to be approved. You lock the whole agenda into one so that we can terminate the meeting as soon as possible. So if you just got here and you haven't even opened up the agenda, you will not think that, oh boy, this waiver is very important to be open for discussion. All right, like for me, the way I look at it, it was a very sneaky way. Okay, and like I said, I know I read part of the report of the controller. He was asking for transparency. Transparency. How about giving the public a preview first? That the board is looking into giving Mr. Sampson a new contract by seeking a new waiver and upping his salary and giving him 5 years of stipend. 5 years of stipend is really blowing my mind off. Why? You're not happy with 190? A 12,500 increase is not good enough. This is not from the board's pocket. This is from the taxpayer. I would love to see that 12,500 is spent directly to educating our children. I would be so happy if that 12,500 would go directly to their funding. Secondly, I was reading the report again for the top 100, placement of the high school in Far New Jersey. I was up to 121. We're not even mentioned yet, but I had to leave because I was going to be late to the meeting. I was up to 121. It means we did not even make it to 120. Okay? So when I go back, I'm going to continue read everything that was required or why we did not accomplish. Secondly, again, the recommendation was transparency. How about this? The early part before Mr. Sampson was hired, and during the first meeting of Mr. Sampson, I did request for these bills to be posted online. We have a lot of technology people employed with the district. This is only a software that you can post these bills so that the public, like myself, maybe I'm the only one, but at least this will give me a chance to review the bills. And if I have questions, I will have time to ask Mr. Boyce before the meeting. Again, I'm working here at 8 o'clock. What chance do I have to review this? This is not a stick to begin with, but something smooth at each step. This is a good thing to show that you're being transparent to the public. Post the bills so that we know. Not too much to us. This is only a simple software that is required to post this bill. I guess that's it.
Okay, Mrs. Close, just to answer your questions, because I know you weren't here at the last board meeting in connection with the superintendent's contract. This board, those of the members that were non-conflicted, heard very loudly the sentiments that were raised by members of the public, most of which are here tonight, and included you, when the proposed merit goals for the superintendent, which, as you noted, are part of the administrative code and meant to be and are actually promoted by the Commissioner of Education and the department as a whole were adopted and approved. There was complaints when the goals that had already been approved by the Executive County Superintendent were approved by the board by public resolution. There were complaints that there would be merit pay in the approximate range of 26% of the superintendent's salary, which would basically mean, since the superintendent's 15, excuse me, that's where I was going. The approximate max value, if all goals were satisfied, would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $203,000. That's if each goal was met. There was concerns at that time. There were concerns when the district submitted documentation to the Executive County Superintendent indicating that the goals were met, indicating that the criteria had been, the objective criteria had been satisfied. And then the subsequent year, those complaints were raised anew. And repeatedly there were comments that, well, this is part of the superintendent's job. Why is he being paid merit raises or merit goal or merit pay on top of that? So the board's chief aim in negotiating the contract for the superintendent was to take the feedback and the comments that the public has raised and to apply them. The new contract, candidly, much to the chagrin of the Department of Education, provides for no merit goals, no merit pay. That was a position the board took, and commendably, that was a position that Mr. Sampson took. There's no merit pay. So there is no chance of the salary increasing. The salary is capped at $190,000. That is not the largest salary. That's pretty much the median salary for school districts that were judged to be comparable to the Freehold Regional High School District, as set by the Department of Education. The Department of Education set the waiver salary amount for this contract. The stipend amount that's noted in the contract was fully discussed, vetted, approved by the Executive County Superintendent and the Commissioner of Education. This was a deliberative process. This was a process that took place over a good period of time. There was no hiding as to what was going on. In fact, at the public meeting, Mr. Moses made public comment, in fact, noting your absence and some of our other more frequent public commenters' absences at the meeting. And I think any attacks on Mr. Sampson for greed or for a money grab, I think you need to put in context, as Mr. Moses noted at the last board meeting, that Mr. Sampson has voluntarily waived any entitlement to merit pay for 12-13, which means that even though contractually the board was obligated to pay those funds, he has waived any right to those monies.
How much of that, Mark?
Again, that's around, that's
Over 10,000?
That's over the 12,500 raise. If the criteria was, I'm sorry? If he had accomplished, and again, I think there was, I remember we were at one of the schools, there was a lot of angst over those goals. So I just wanted to put that into context. The important part of this is that, one, from the board's perspective, and I'm just speaking for the board's perspective, the merit pay that was so detested is no longer there. And that was a chief aim. That is not going to be there when we come in the fall. We're not going to have to go through the unhappiness and the unpleasantness that this caused a lot of folks. So just, I wanted to clarify that procedural aspect of it and just clarify some of the math.
May I just say something, Stanley? First of all,
Yes.
thank you for your explanation. Secondly, I did not accuse Mr. Sampson of being greedy and whatever the other term you used.
And I didn't mean to insinuate that. What I was saying was there was a comment that the.
Words being thrown here very hard.
Let me say this. The comment was was 12,500 not enough, and that was what I was responding to. And I just wanted to point out that even though he didn't have to, he did give that money back to the district.
Okay. And like I said, that Mary was the biggest loophole, which I myself brought up to the governor's office and also to the county superintendent. And last year, he did say to us that he was going to have to bar. Unfortunately, the goals that fell on this year also, the merit and the quantitative, very simply is just his plain job description. Okay? So when you say about the merit, again, that was only something that was offered on the table, but it's the right of the board to approve or deny.
Yes.
It is not a handout that he gets it automatically if he accomplishes all those goals. Like I said, it's up to the board. But like I said, the board never says no anyway, so he's going to get it. Okay? But the point is, I know what you're trying to do is to avoid a discussion, but 12,500. But you have to understand, too, the merit is not put into pension. You are not, nothing is...
The stipend is not put into pension, Mrs. Close.
But now
Stipend...
$190,000 will be built his pension.
Yes, that is his base salary is pensionable. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we're not saying that who won. Like I said, we will discuss properly.
Okay.
Leon Ceronic.
First, I want to thank Heshi for forceful explanation of what has happened as a result of the timeliness of Mr. Boxer's report. Perhaps if some of this explanation of how business was being conducted would have been provided at earlier meetings when questions were being asked, maybe there wouldn't have been the misunderstandings that you claim that the public has had. You went back and referred to the Watson years, and I specifically remember during that time, we, the same few people here that are speaking out, Watson blamed us for everything that was wrong. And it seems like the tables are still being turned. It's the public's fault, not anybody else's. It's not the misunderstandings that the public might have gotten from maybe incomplete answers to questions that were asked that have since been addressed by the Comptroller's report. And unfortunately, Mrs. Close, who asked a lot of those questions in those early years and was treated sometimes arrogantly, was ridiculed, and was dragged through the mud by certain people during her campaign for the Manalapan seat on this board, is regrettable. She asked a lot of these questions that it turns out that the Comptroller dealt with in his response. So that being said, the questions about Mr. Sampson's contract is also important to us for the reasons that Gloria brought up. He had a 4-year contract, and within less than 2 years, I'm sorry, Heshi, if I'm boring.
You're not boring me.
We're going over.
You're not boring me. I'm listening to every word you're saying.
Many of us are sports fans, and we read the papers when a noted ball player, whether baseball, football, or basketball player, signs a multi-year contract, and within a couple of years discovers that somebody else got a higher contract, and now he wants to renegotiate his contract. And we sit back and say, where's the ethics in this? The ownership, and the board members are the ownership. Why aren't they allowing the ball player to live out the terms of his contract when, if he continues to have a good 4 years or whatever his contract was for, renegotiate and give him a good raise? What has been accomplished in such a short amount of time by Mr. Sampson that required that he get that you either, whatever phrase you want to use, renegotiate or give him a new contract in such a short time? As Gloria pointed out, the rankings of the district still doesn't crack the top 100. We see a lot of bureaucracy being created, but other than that, why couldn't you wait until his 4 years are up, look at all the positive things that were developed and achievements by the district, and then reward him with a new contract? What was the urgency of, other than the fact that you listened to us and decided that maybe we were making sense with the merit pay proposals, and you say, okay, we'll do away with the merit pay proposal. You could have done away with that anyway. As you said, this was something that the board had the power to approve or disapprove. If you wanted to do that, then disapprove them. But the idea of renegotiating a contract at this stage of the game, it just, to us, doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Well, I know usually Carl asks me to just say, thank you for your opinion and to keep my mouth shut. That is not going to happen tonight, Carl, and I apologize to you, and also in advance to you, Mr. Boyce, and any other board member here. I know that a little bit of the coach in me is going to come out. And if you feel attacked by me, so be it. Because I was elected primarily by ex-students who voted for me to come on this board and to help change what was going on here. And I think that this board has done a great job of doing that, and we continue to get attacked. So I knew this was going to happen, and Mr. Sampson, you'll excuse me. My comments are to the vocal minority. 2 years ago, mainly because of Mr. Carl, we as a board decided to go to Trenton, to the OSC, to ask them to come into our district and check everything that we did and how we did it. This would be akin, and by the way, this is my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for the board. This would be akin to going to the IRS before filing your tax returns to make sure that everything is compliant. It is simply not something that is normally done. Prior to the OSC review, we decided to put out a new RFP, Legal Services. Carl, who probably helped to write more RFPs than anyone in the state of New Jersey, got a two-man panel, independent of the board, and made up of legal experts to help us rank the firms on general counsel, labor negotiations, special education. Schwartz, Simon, and Elstein came in first in the second two categories. Once again, not by us, by the independent board. They came in first in the second two categories, and the Comegno group came in first in the first category. The board and Mr. Sampson decided to give the two law firms a 1-year trial. During that time, the tenure charges against the Manalapan principal went to trial. And you do not change lawyers in the middle of a trial, especially if you think, they're doing a good job, and Nick Celso was doing a great job, so we weren't changing. As an aside, I find it mind-blowing that the vocal minority has decided that it was in their best interest to back an ex-principal whom an administrative law judge removed and a commissioner of education deemed unfit to hold that position. Now, instead of commending Mr. Sampson, a new superintendent, for taking on a sitting principal who we believed, and rightly so, to be unfit for many reasons, Mr. Sampson and his administration and this board have been attacked. I would like to believe that the vocal minority is ignorant of the fact that the legal bills that were reviewed by the OSC were from a time period that was before Mr. Sampson was our superintendent. We were accused of having and paying for multiple attorneys at board meetings. The truth is, we could have 50 lawyers at a Board of Education meeting, and we would have only to pay one flat fee. I think it is important to note that the OSC had these bills and contracts for over 2 years. If there was anything so egregious that required immediate intervention, we are certain that the OSC would have notified our district, as well as the 80 or so other New Jersey school districts that contracted with the Schwartz-Simon-Edelstein Group during that time, to cease and desist all objectionable building procedures immediately. The Freehold Regional High School District was concerned and looked for outside and objective and evaluation, and that was what the OSC gave us. So let me recap some of what has occurred since the OSC was called in May 2011 by this Board of Education. The vocal minority wanted the former superintendent gone because of the questionable doctoral degree, and I'm being kind. He left. Not good enough. The vocal minority wanted money the district paid for the questionable degrees paid back to the extent legally permissible, which has been done. Not good enough. The vocal minority wanted the last law firm gone. This happened because of a fair and impartial RFP. Not good enough. The vocal minority wanted merit pay gone from the superintendent's contract. This has happened. Not good enough. And let me add, since I know a little bit about sports, Leon and I share this in common. I have never heard of a major league player, whatever sport, give up his contract for a new contract that guarantees to pay him less for the next 5 years than he would have made under the old contract. I've never heard of that before. When is enough enough? Probably never for some people. However, for me, it is tonight. I sincerely believe that some members of the vocal minority do not care about the excellent education our district provides its students. I believe at one point they were honest guard dogs. Unfortunately, I believe they have become attack dogs, unable or unwilling to see what positive things have occurred in this district over the last 2 years. I would never stop the vocal minority or anyone else from participating in public comment period of the board meetings. However, I, for one, have lost all respect and believability in anything that they say from here on in. Thank you.
Agenda.
Okay. We have the approval of the actions. Don't forget the yellow sheet, which is H1, H2. I would like to ask that we take this all in one shot. If anyone, do we have to need discussion on that?
We need a motion.
We need a motion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Discussion.
Motion is to take the agenda in one shot.
Not to actually vote on it.
No,
No.
not actually vote on it.
Just taking one shot.
Who was second?
Right. Discussion?
Again, just for
Seeing none.
clarity, this is just motion to take everything in one shot, not the actual vote on agenda items. That will be the subsequent vote if this passes.
Can I just make that? I make a motion to pass H1 to H7, I1 to I8, J1 to J3, K1 to K9, and L1 to L2, including anything in the yellow sheet.
And Ron supported that. Do we need discussion on that?
Any discussion on it? Just
Okay, then let's.
you can
vote
just
on
do
it.
it.
If I could. Sure. That space we've traveled down.
Yeah, we're
We've
going
already halfway down this path. The motion on the table is to take the agenda as one, yes or no, not to actually vote on the agenda. So, Mr. Mazik, hold that thought. Any discussion?
Do voice vote.
Mr. Acetola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazik?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Yes. Now we can vote on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, now we're going to take a vote on agenda, discussion. Anybody have a
Motion.
Motion.
motion first?
Second.
Mary Ann, second.
Ron, second. Daily double. Discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Boyce.
Mr. Asatola?
Yes.
Mrs. Canario?
Yes.
Mrs. Lavin?
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Messinger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sutera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazick?
Yes.
Mr. Moses?
Absolutely. All right, for new business, Mr.
I just want to formally welcome Dr. Nicole Santora to the school district. Nicole is filling the position of Administrative Supervisor for Curriculum and Instruction. If you recall, a few months back, Len Nebo left the state for another position. We've been looking to fill that position for a few months now. It's a difficult spot to fill as we were looking for somebody with particular skill sets. Dr. Santora has been a comp sci teacher, a mathematics teacher, a supervisor of mathematics, a district supervisor, K-12 of science and mathematics. I overlapped with Nicole for a few years back in Verona, and know her work very well. And I'm proud to welcome her to the Freehold Regional High School District. She's a Marlboro High School graduate, so she's coming home.
Any old business? Seeing none, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Oh, let Ron do it, please, so we can have a triple. Right. All those in favor? I got it. As soon as this is done, you can. Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Done. Seconded. Thirded. Thirded. Let Carl third it. All those in favor?
Good.
So shall you say, so shall it be done. Swa, sweet, sweet.